This conference will now be recorded.
Oh, you're muted, Dan.
Hello, University of Strathclyde, and welcome to our webinar today. Lovely to see so many of you signing on, and big thanks to the Career Service at Strathclyde, particularly Jill and Ruth, who've kindly invited me along to speak to you for 30 minutes. So it's going to be pretty quick. There will be the opportunity to ask questions in the chat box. So by all means, put your questions in there. I'll happily answer those at the end. And this will also be recorded. So if you do need to go through any of the slides, I will be posting this on our YouTube channel, so you'll also get to watch it back. So, graduating in a pandemic. I've run this presentation a few times now. And it seems to be very popular with graduates about to enter the jobs market in extremely unusual situations. So hopefully by the end of this, I'll give you some positivity, some reassurance to take those steps that you deserve as graduates, having studied your degrees. So first of all, a short introduction. My name's Dan Hawes. I'm the GRB co-founder. GRB stands for Graduate Recruitment Bureau. We're the go-to platform for high-caliber university students, graduates, and recruiters. Established back in 1997 by myself and a colleague, we've grown gradually over that time to 40 staff. We have over 1,800 clients across all sectors, companies you will have heard of like Post Office, IBM, Unilever, and Ocado, but also several fast-growing SMEs, the kind of companies that may go under the radar for a lot of graduates. So a very broad range of clients. Our recruitment experts have successfully matched over 8,000 graduates, helping them with their full-time graduate level jobs. So that's a brief background to myself and GRB. So let's start with some of the headlines we've been seeing over the last 6 months. So I mean, I keep up to date with most news sources. I read the FT quite a bit. So there's some headlines here from the FT about the prospects for the class of 2020, a survey on the end there about youth concerns during COVID, the top one being employment, and then other articles from The Guardian and the BBC about how things have turned upside down for university students at the moment. So, the situation we find ourselves in. The pandemic, okay, it killed over 927,000 people around the world. So, this has put the brakes on social mobility and also economic growth. Since the lockdown in the UK, 750,000 people have lost their jobs. 500,000 graduates are about to enter the jobs market. They'll be looking to pay around £50,000 worth of debt after studying for 3 years at university. This isn't confined to this country, it's on a global scale, as we all know. Projections vary for normal economic levels to return from anything from 18 months to 36 months. So we know the government trying their best to get the economy back on its feet, but it's going to take some time. So recruiters, with our clients and companies we've spoken to, a lot of them have deferred their start dates by maybe 6 to 8 weeks, or they're putting things on hold, they're postponing their recruitment. No one has actually stopped, okay? That's the good news. But things have changed, things have been delayed, things have been postponed, and certain companies such as SMEs, small to medium enterprises, particularly have been really hard hit because they've got more pressing issues, survival. So recruiting graduates may not be a top priority for SMEs right now. The graduate labour market has suffered significantly. So some sectors more than others. So particularly the arts, we're reading about how they've been affected hugely by the pandemic, possibly the worst affected sector in the UK. Retail, hospitality, travel and accommodation employers have all taken long-term hits. We could add aviation to that as well, and a few other sectors that are really suffering right now, and maybe with future lockdowns may face even more challenging times. So certain sectors are right at the front line of this pandemic, and they're really bearing the brunt of it. Graduates will become risk averse. Typically in recessions, and we've been through several downturns over the years, we've noticed graduates tend to choose safer options that offer more financial security. So usually postgraduate study has a huge uplift during recessions, and we're seeing that at the moment. But career-wise, a lot of graduates tend to go for jobs in the public sector that are more secure, or in certain areas where, as I say, there's more financial or job security. So graduates' behaviour does change during downturns. Some university degrees may not have actually prepared graduates for jobs now in this new economy, so that's a concern. And also graduates who left it until now can face narrower options and risk taking a dead-end job, which is so unfair. Graduates who studied for their degree, trying to get a 2-1 or a first, and now entering the jobs market do face challenging times, and it can be very hard to make that first step into the world of work. So that's the doom and gloom over with. That's the negative stuff. Let's move on to the positive things and what you can do graduating in a pandemic. So depends where you look for positive news. So again, in the FT, I mean, this was this week, in fact. IKEA, they're having a record year for store launches. So something's going well in retail there. In construction, again, the other day I read an article about a mini housing boom fueling a recovery in construction. So there's another industry that's bouncing back. And also something there for MBA graduates, that's seen a spike in hiring. But most interestingly, at the very end here, we noticed the 10 fastest growing industries in the UK right now, which makes very interesting reading. So finance and investment, people and organizations are still investing money. That's going on regardless. CRM systems, so technical consultancies, we're seeing are actually accelerating their growth during this time. So CRM systems, customer relationship management systems, seeing an increase of 43% right now. Again, IT, language learning software developers, healthcare, obviously, as we're aware of, the construction of new healthcare facilities is growing. Online food ordering, as you'd expect, and various delivery platforms. So any in-house service is doing extremely well right now. One of our biggest clients was Amazon. So, you know, unsurprisingly, they're doing extremely well, as are several other online e-commerce websites. So that makes some interesting reading there. You may want to follow up on that particular report that we saw in IBIS World recently. So there's some good news, and that's in the last 4 or 5 weeks we've noticed this. So not only that, there's several surveys and research we've seen that point to some very favourable conditions for graduates about to enter the jobs market. So first of all, the level of vacancies is running at just over 50% of normal rates. So it's not great, but it is climbing slowly. So that was from the Recruitment Employers Confederation. So that's the REC, and they're the official body for recruiters and employers. They have some brilliant surveys that they do with their members, and these are thousands of members, different organisations, so we really pay attention to the results of their surveys. They also identified that health, social care, IT and finance, all sectors we mentioned on the previous slide, have been less affected than other areas of the economy. So if you're going to apply for jobs, these are some of the sectors we'd certainly recommend you focusing in on. Although things are going slowly this year, many employers are at least discussing recruiting in Q3 and Q4, if conditions permit, after missing their normal recruitment round earlier in the year. So, as I said earlier, many companies have postponed their graduate recruitment. So maybe Q3 and Q4, this backlog may start to come through. But with all this uncertainty, it can be very hard for companies to plan these things. But at least in this survey, they're discussing it. So they're starting to come around to the idea that they can't delay things anymore. Another survey of business leaders, this time with Management Today and Hays, a huge national recruitment agency. They found that 55% of employers would now be more likely to consider hiring an employee who is not within commuting distance to the office. Now, this is a huge change with lots of organisations. With people not being able to come into the office, employers are starting to think, well, we don't need people who can get to the office within an hour or so. We can look at employees who live at the other end of the country. So that's great for graduates in Scotland, let's say, who want to work for a company in London. So this opens up the door to many other employers if you're prepared to work remotely. So the whole dynamic of how people are working is changing. So that does create opportunities for graduates who may be restricted by social mobility. So that's really positive news. 55% now more likely to consider hiring an employee who's not within commuting distance. I think that's a really interesting development. Now, between the 18th and the 25th of September, there was a report about the total number of online job adverts. So this would have looked at Reed, Monster, all the usual job boards. And they've noticed a slight increase from 55% to 59% increase, with all categories climbing. Now, you may want to look at some of the detail here. They might not be permanent jobs. Some of them might be temporary roles, but don't ignore temporary roles either. These could be an opportunity to get in the door with an employer, and eventually they might take you on full time when they can afford to do so. So that's an interesting piece of research that we also saw recently. Again, the REC produced some results that were very interesting. I'd like to share with you that employers' intentions to hire permanent staff in the next 3 months rose to a net level of +11 during June to August. So again, the right sort of approaches are starting to be made. They're intending on hiring, and it's permanent roles they're looking to fill. So that is very encouraging, and that was with about 2,000 employers they did that research with. So that's very encouraging for graduates. And finally, the British Chamber of Commerce. They did a quarterly survey, and this said that 41% of firms said they expected their turnover to increase over the next 12 months. So that's encouraging. So they're seeing their businesses grow, and that means that they'll need extra people to help them. So 41% of firms expecting their turnover to increase in the next 12 months. So this is just some of the surveys, research and polls that we see in our industry. And in the last month or so, I have to say, it has been a lot more encouraging. So that's good to see. And certainly for graduates entering the job market, they need to realise that the headlines you see in all the papers paint a very different picture. You need to look in certain areas, and you will find positive news. Okay, so these are the positive steps we think you as graduates from the University of Strathclyde can take right now to capitalise on this situation in the economy and get yourself ahead in the jobs market. Now, as I said before, we have helped graduates through downturns before. So the recession in 2008-9 is very similar. The 9/11 disaster, and also the dot-com bubble in the past. We've seen these downturns before. It is challenging, but there are various steps we've seen work for graduates before, and we'd like to share these with you now. So first of all, it can be very easy to fall into a negative mindset. If you read the wrong kind of headlines, it can be very demoralizing. But just remember why you did your course at the University of Strathclyde. What job were you setting your sights on? And just revisit that, and just remember to stay on track and stay the course with the type of career goals you were originally intending on going for. So that's very important. You need to set some goals. Secondly, avoid these sectors we touched on before that clearly are suffering. They're not going to be hiring. Training graduates is not a priority for companies who are on the aviation, tourism, the arts sector, leisure, hospitality. For a lot of these organizations, it's survival, cost cutting, letting people go. So unfortunately, these areas are not going to come back anytime soon. So look at the sectors we mentioned before that are seeing a surge of activity. So I mentioned, e-commerce. So online retail obviously is very, very big. Any in-home service. So we've looked at Deliveroo before, or Ocado, organizations like that. Healthcare, construction was another one we saw on the previous slide. Fintech is another area that seems to be growing. So technology that's provided for financial service institutions. Cybersecurity, another sector in tech that's growing really rapidly at the moment. So these are around concerns about data and privacy. So big organizations are making sure that cybersecurity is something they look into, particularly with more people working from home. So they need to make sure those computers are secure and their networks are secure, there's no breach of data. So there's whole issues around home working and the technical implications of that are creating new jobs. Analytics, now this isn't a sector, but it's a role we place a lot of graduates in. So it's really going through a lot of data, looking for insights, forecasting, looking at trends, things like that. So particularly dominant in the retail sector. So we work with some very large supermarkets, and they look for graduates to go through a lot of data to look at sales and trends and various other things to optimize their stock and things like that. So these are some of the sectors, albeit very niche, some of them, that are benefiting and growing and accelerating during this pandemic. So next, you need to build your CV with skills that employers will value. So needless to say, the Career Service will have given you guidance on this about making sure you have an employable skill set when you leave university. So apart from your academics, you will have had the opportunity to do various other things at university, volunteering, other work experience, part-time jobs, that kind of thing. Now, so will lots of other graduates as well. The trick is how you present yourself in a CV to an employer. So we always advise graduates to look carefully at the job description that you're going for. Look at the skills that they're looking for specifically and reflect on those in your CV and make your CV relevant. So that's a really good use of your time, is making sure that your CV is looking as best as it can possibly be right now to help you stand out and differentiate yourself from all the other graduates. Now, the other thing you need to do, obviously, is use your time productively right now. So you're entering the jobs market. you're starting to look for work, you may be looking to stay at university, whatever that is, try to keep moving forward, take small steps, set goals, build lists of things that you want to achieve, but ultimately feel like you're gathering momentum towards your goal. And one thing that you might want to think about is actually practicing various parts of the recruitment process. So for instance, we're helping a lot of graduates with virtual interviews and virtual assessment centres, because a huge number of graduate recruiters now can't see graduates face to face. So they've shifted a lot of their recruitment processes online. So they're doing virtual interviews, virtual assessment days, and even virtual onboarding. So, you know, we're all getting used to using Zoom and various platforms, but how do you think you perform in an interview, face to face, looking at your laptop, being asked questions? So it can involve slightly different preparation. So it's certainly advisable to learn the skills about presenting yourself to the best possible way in a virtual interview environment. So we talked about getting your CV in shape, practicing and being prepared to speak to graduate recruiters, but you need to do as much as possible to get noticed. So your career service will help you with job alerts, things like that, from employers that are using them right now. Certainly use other recruitment agencies. You look at ones that are maybe specialists in certain areas. Ask them about their success rate. Use LinkedIn. Lots of graduates are putting up profiles on there right now, which are essentially a copy of their CV. But huge numbers of employers will use LinkedIn to advertise jobs, so get on that platform. And also another technique that we've seen work time and time again is sending speculative letters. So what I mean by this is, if you are particularly attracted to a certain company, but you see they haven't got a job advertised. First of all, a huge number of companies won't actually advertise on their website. They may offer it internally first, or they may seek referrals from their own employees, but don't think that they haven't got any jobs. I would always suggest doing some research on that employer. Look at some of the projects they're working on, or some of the people on LinkedIn. Have a look at their jobs, see what they're doing, see if you can follow any of their updates. So when you send a letter to them or an email, you can specifically say that you have the skills that will help them achieve the various projects that they're working on. And we've seen it before with a very good CV that's tailored to that organization. The chances are they might say, you know what, we'd love to hire you, come in for an interview, or we were thinking of creating this job, but your skill set looks perfect. So I think that's a really good strategy to certainly limit the competition, but also give you an edge and get noticed, and be a little bit more creative in the way you approach companies. Now, invariably, in an interview, one of the questions will be, what did you do in the lockdown? So we talked about using your time productively. So I would hope you'd be able to answer this question with something like online learning. You've taken a course with a university, and we know that the Open University do courses, Harvard University do various courses, but make sure that it's something that is relevant to that employer. So there's still time, if you need to maybe improve your skills in a certain piece of software. It could be something like Excel. You want to improve using Excel. That will always be useful to an employer. Or you might have used this time to volunteer, or even do contract or part-time work. It's very important that you have a really good answer to that question, because we've seen a lot of employers be very interested in what graduates have been doing in these particularly challenging times. And if you can get across that this hasn't set you back, you've continued to this point, that will show that you have resilience. And that is a really big skill that a lot of graduates are looking for right now, that you can take these knocks but still move forward. You also have other options too. We talked about postgraduate study. Now, a lot of graduates during recessions think, you know what, I'm going to take some time out of the jobs market. Hopefully in a year's time, it will be better. And that's not a bad route to take if that course is going to add to your skill set, make you more employable. So by all means do that and choose carefully, and it will come at some expense as well, but that's not a bad option if you decide to stay at university right now, and lots of graduates are seriously thinking about doing that. Others may think, you know what, I'm going to go abroad, go to other countries that are coming out of this pandemic. So China, there are plenty of opportunities there. We've seen quite a few graduates go over there to teach English, for instance, and things are starting to relax and move forward a little bit more as they were the first in and they're the first out of this pandemic. So that could be an option. Or if you've had a side business while you've been at university, now could be the time to use this opportunity to really put more investment of your time in that and build it up. We hear all the time about how many businesses are set up during a recession, and it is a very good opportunity. If yours is the right business and you're seeing that demand, why not start to scale it up? So that's another option. So you don't have to start a job right now. There are other things you can do. And finally, one big lesson from the last recession was that big firms still had a shortfall come the autumn. So a lot of graduates think they have to get their application in on a graduate scheme at a certain time, and then offers are made, and then that scheme closes. That's not the case. About 40% of graduate recruiters around about now are likely to have a shortfall. So what I mean is many graduates will take more than one job offer, and they might leave it till a week to go to tell one company that they're not going to start with them. Now, some companies may have a reserve list of graduates to hedge against this, but many recruiters may not. So they have a shortfall of 1, 2, or maybe in some cases up to 10 vacancies they need to fill. And all of a sudden, they need to go back to market, and graduates aren't looking. They think the jobs aren't there. So if there was an employer that you looked at this time last year that opened their campaign, go back and actually speak to the recruiter and see if there's a shortfall, see if there's been offers that have been rescinded, and that may be a clever way of getting into an employer of your choice that you assume, as with many of the graduates, have closed the door and they have every graduate that they need. So shortfall is a big reason graduates miss out on opportunities, and it happened in the last recession and the recession before that. So one other thing before I take any questions from you is that we have gone the extra mile here at GRB, and we've launched a sister site called graduatementor.uk. Now, this is designed to offer one-to-one career mentoring for university graduates entirely for free. So we've managed to recruit about 80 inspiring business leaders, professionals, professional coaches, mentors, university career staff, and other people that have offered to give their time to graduates for one-to-one mentoring using Zoom or Teams, things like that. So I'd strongly suggest you get on there, use this free service and brainstorm with a mentor, maybe someone who's working in the sector that you want to work in. Go through your CV, ask about what it's like to work in a certain industry. It's all there for you. So this is part of our Help the COVID Generation campaign. And we're delighted to offer this to University of Strathclyde students and graduates. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to take those for you now.
Hi, Dan. Can I just come in there just for 1 second? First of all, just to say thank you very much for doing the webinar today. I'm June Cunningham. I'm one of the consultants at the Career Service at Strathclyde. So just while we're waiting for some questions to come in, I just wanted to remind you that there's lots of help and support available to you as graduates from the Career Service. It doesn't mean that once you've graduated you can't access our services. And if you go into the Career Service website, we have a careers toolkit which has a program called My Career in Lockdown, which goes through a lot of the things that Dan has touched on today and reinforces some of the messages that you've heard in the webinar today. So thanks again, Dan. It's been really reassuring, and I'm sure that everyone who attended found it really useful. Does anyone have any questions they want to pop into the chat?
There is one here from Tiana Renee Sexton. Hello. Oh, hi, I can see you. As a master's student looking to switch industries, I am unsure how to market myself to companies whose recruitment has already begun. What strategy should I use to get them to see my potential? That's a brilliant question. And we get this a lot from graduates who need to focus maybe on their transferable skills, because this can mean that you can actually access jobs you hadn't considered before. When a lot of graduates think, I've done an engineering degree, I'm only cut out for engineering, or I've done a finance degree, all I can do is finance. Well, that's not the case. If you look at the actual skill set that you have, the chances are that there could be other sectors that you could turn to. So I think, I don't know the subject you're studying or the industry that you want to get into, but the chances are, because this happens so often, there will be the opportunity to present yourself. When you look at the skills that they're looking for, you'll be able to present yourself accordingly, and the actual degree subject may not matter. It's quite surprising in some industries, like say accountancy, a lot of them don't actually look for an accounting degree. It's not that essential. They will look at other degrees. So yeah, that would be my advice, is to look at your skill set, look at the skills that that particular organization are looking for, and if there's a match, shout about it on your CV and make out, talk about all the good things that you've done and how you can apply those to that employer.
Is it okay if I follow up?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'll put my email in this chat box, and you can send me your CV. We can have another discussion if you like.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Let's do that. Stuart, how should I tackle being overqualified as a master's graduate for positions I'm interested in? That's always struck me as an interesting thought, because you are bringing more to the table to a graduate employer. And again, it comes down to selling yourself and how you present your skill set to that employer. I'd be interested to know the jobs you've applied for and the feedback as to why they think you're overqualified. I guess for some employers, they think they may have to pay more to a graduate with a postgraduate course. That's sometimes one of the reasons employers are reluctant to do that. But I think if you flip that, you can present yourself, with so much more, with that extra year that you maybe specialize in a particular subject. I think you've got more to offer. And if you make it clear that you are applying for this job, you're accepting the salary that they're offering, then I don't see why they shouldn't treat you any differently. But again, if you'd like to follow up with me on your particular situation, there may be something I'm missing, but if you want to speak to me, Stuart, on this subject, I'd be more than happy to follow up with you.
I will do. Thanks, Dan. I'll send you an email.
Great. Okay.
Cheers.
You're welcome. So this session has been recorded, so you can listen back to some of the points I raised. I have raced through this. I only have half an hour, and happy to follow up with anyone directly by my email, or visit the website as well. There's loads of information on there, and of course visit your website, your career service rather, like June said, because they're providing an excellent service remotely as well, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Everything's remote at the moment, but there's no problem with making an appointment to speak to us if you need to.
There's one more question there again. A master's student, would you think it's better to go down the safer route of a graduate scheme or go straight into looking for a job after graduating? Okay, so there are graduate schemes, graduate management training programs, which usually are with very large organizations. The training is excellent, usually over a year or two, and then you're landed into a management position, shall we say. So you're fast tracked. So those schemes are very geared to graduates who want to work in big organizations and follow a set kind of career path. And that's great. It looks great on your CV, and there's some fantastic opportunities out there. But on the flip side, there are graduate jobs. So these are jobs which may not be on a scheme, but they require a degree. So they're looking for someone with a particular skill set. Now, the training might be different. It might be shorter. They might want someone to hit the ground running more quickly. But in a growing organization, you could see your career progression go a lot quicker. And we've seen it before, placing graduates into companies that maybe not quite in the Premier League yet, but with investment, they grow really, really quickly. And they start to hire more and more graduates. So you can kind of ride their success. Obviously, you need to pick and choose carefully the kind of companies that you want to join. But I think SMEs offer great opportunities. You can get involved in lots of different projects. You could be working more closely with senior management. The chance of moving around that organization as they grow. It's kind of very exciting period, especially with startups as well. But they do come with risk. They may not go the distance. But from an experience point of view, if you're there for a year or two, wow, I mean, that would be a very employable skill set for the next employer, that you've been part of a growing company. So it really depends on where your aspirations lie and the kind of company that really fits your values and what you'd be comfortable working for. So they can be very, very different. Companies of different sizes, different sectors. Do they match your values? So don't take the first job that you're offered. Carefully choose the kind of organization that you feel matches your personality, and you'll find a lot more job satisfaction, I think, by doing that. Okay, are there any more questions?
There's one there about international students.
Oh, sorry, didn't see that. Lakshay, yeah, sorry. What do you suggest for international postgraduate students who are going to the job market? How will the employability look for us in the near future? We deal with all different kinds of companies, lots of different sectors. Some of them are unable to take on international students. So for example, like in the defense industry, so the security reasons and things like that, security clearance. So for some sectors, it can be problematic. But there are many companies who really value the skill set that someone from another country can bring to an organization. Increasingly, more and more companies are looking for diversity. And this covers lots of different areas, and companies are starting to realize that they are missing out building their company in a diverse way by not looking at graduates from different backgrounds, disadvantaged backgrounds, for instance. So there is a website that is dedicated to listing all the employers that can take international graduates, actually. I think it's called Student Circus. Have you heard of that, June?
No, I would usually refer to the UK Border Agency website for companies, but I'll have a look at Student Circus as well.
Student Circus, I'm pretty sure that's what it's called, but yeah, they list all companies who can arrange sponsorship and will take on international graduates. So have a look at that, and also the border agency. So yeah, there are opportunities there. Just they can be quite hard to find, I suppose. Well, it's been a pleasure to help you, and thank you all for your time today. Thank you once again to June and the Career Service for having me along. If you do need our help, do follow up with me, and particularly the Graduate Mentor site is proving very popular at the moment with lots of graduates to get one-to-one mentoring.
That's great. It's been brilliant, Dan. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.